Okay, great. So let's see if this works out. Okay, great. Excellent. Good. Good, good, good. Oh, Jared, hello. How are you? It's nice to see you, my friend. How are you doing? I'm just testing out the live stream in preparation for tomorrow's live stream regarding afterlife. So it looks like everything's shaping up to be fine. But if there are any issues, I think I want to try to work them out now. And also just as a kind of way to just say hello to you, my dear friends, in real time. So that's just the plan. So I don't know how long I'll be, probably not too long, but it looks like things are looking fine. I'm looking at my computer screen now, which is right here, and it looks like there's no freezing up or any buffering issues. So it looks like things should be okay for tomorrow's stream. So that's great. So we're looking forward to it. So, okay, so Isaac is here. Isaac, my dear friend, how are you doing? I hope you're doing very well. So, and Jared says, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well. Yes, I'm fine. It's the end of a work week for me. So now it's Friday night here, Friday the 13th of March 2020. And so I'm here just unwinding after a pretty busy week. And so there have been a lot of things that have been happening, of course, with respect to my own, just, well, not a lot, I suppose, but just ordinary things. But it's just been a little bit of a busy week, but things have now reached the weekend, so that should be nice. Although we still have this sort of issue, global issue, as it were, which affects each particular company, or not company, but each particular country and each particular part of the world in its own way. So hopefully things will be, hopefully, yeah, things will find a speedy resolution, but we have to remain realistic, of course. But anyway, my friends, so I just wanted to make sure that the stream is working. So it looks like it will be working okay. At least it's working now. So as you know, there were some issues last week with the live stream. So unfortunately, we couldn't complete the live stream with respect to Afterlife, which is right here, right? So this is the film Afterlife, and unfortunately, we couldn't complete it because of the buffering issues. And so it'll be my great honor to do this film tomorrow, which is Saturday, the 14th of March, 2020, at 11 p.m. Tokyo time. So Saturday, which is it's going to be about 24 hours from now, maybe 25 hours from now, perhaps. And we'll be talking about this. So it'll be Afterlife Redux, as it were. So if you're interested, please feel free to stop by. And if you're unable to stop by, you can always check out the video, which will be uploaded after the live stream is over. So whatever works for your schedule, my friend, that's fine. And I'm very much looking forward to that. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts about that. So and as you know, last week we tried it, but the live stream, we had technical difficulties, so unfortunately we couldn't complete it. So I will start from the beginning. I will start my conversation from the very beginning, what I was planning to speak about, and then we will go from there, and let's see how the conversation hopefully grows and it or maybe organically evolves into something else, depending on what the comments in the live chat will be about this film. I'm not sure exactly what people's reactions will be I know I've spoken to a number of people about this film Afterlife already, and I've heard a lot of positives about this film. I would very much emphasize also that I too am in the camp of really, really admiring this film so much. And I would also suggest, which I'll try to make the point in detail tomorrow, but I would also suggest that this film is filled with a lot of kind of trickery. And I mean that in a complimentary light, but it's filled with a lot of trickery, and it's quite ingeniously deceptive in many ways. I think the more I see it, the more times I watch the film, and I've seen the film a number of times, but the more times I see the film, the more I realize just how inherently deceptive, ingeniously deceptive this film is. And I think that is I mean that as a very high compliment. This is a really technically proficient film put together with such astuteness and very high degree of confidence. It's amazing that this came relatively early in the narrative film career of the director Hirokazu Koreeda. So, but there are some issues also with respect to this film and what is truth, what is fiction, and the like. And so, I'll try to touch upon that and other issues with respect to this film, or other topics with respect to this film, during the live stream, which will take place, Saturday, March 14th, 2020 at 11 p.m. Tokyo time. So hopefully, my friends, if you are interested, please feel free to stop by at any time, and it would be my pleasure to hear your thoughts about this very fantastic work from Koreeda, which is the film Afterlife. This happens to be the Japanese Blu-ray, and I will speak to this Japanese Blu-ray a little bit also in the live chat, live stream tomorrow. I know that some people are interested in this film, and I'm not sure. I think it has a relatively limited availability, at least on physical media, in North America. I think it has a nice BFI release in the United Kingdom, but as far as North America is concerned, I think that it's only on a very, very hard to get now OOP DVD, if I recall, which is kind of an old one now, going back almost, I think, 20 years perhaps, maybe. So it's pretty, it might not be the most up-to-date DVD out there, so maybe it's not worth getting under certain sort of high prices, which it might be fetching for on the sort of OOP used market. I'm not sure, but so for many people, maybe this Blu-ray might be of interest. I mean, this is a Japanese Blu-ray, but as some of you already know, Japanese Blu-rays can play on US Blu-ray players without any issue, because the US and Japan are in the same Blu-ray region, so you don't necessarily need to have a region-free player in order to play a Japanese Blu-ray. If you happen to live in the US, you can play a Japanese Blu-ray on a US player without any issue. I mean, the opposite is true too. I can play US Blu-rays on my Japanese regular Blu-ray player without any issue. So, and this also has the film with English subtitles, which for the most part are, I think, very good. And there are a couple of special features on here, rather fair. Well, there's one actually that's not so short, but there are two of them out there. And unfortunately for those of you out there who are maybe outside of Japan, unfortunately these two supplements are not, as far as I can tell, equipped with any English language subtitle support or anything of the sort, and so unfortunately that's I mean, the movie itself has English subtitles, but these supplements do not. So, but I think the film itself on Blu-ray is really worth it, although I do understand that this does fetch quite a pretty high amount just on retail price alone here. And if you add on that shipping price, it might total something of a pretty relatively expensive item as a new Blu-ray. So it might be worth considering, of course, but also just be sure that you're okay with the price as it's offered, say on, I don't know, Amazon Japan or something like that. But in any event, my friends, I'll try to touch upon this this Blu-ray in more detail tomorrow because I think it's a very good presentation. So anyway, so let's hopefully you will be interested in watching the live stream tomorrow with respect to Afterlife. So that's tomorrow. That's Saturday, March 14th, 2020 at 11 p.m. And then the following Saturday, which by my count is March 21st, 2020 at also 11 p.m. Tokyo time, Saturday, we will be talking about the film Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo, 1958. And I've spoken about this film Vertigo maybe in passing throughout this channel. I have mentioned it though as being, for a long time in my life, I had considered the film to be my absolute favorite film ever, Vertigo, and even now it's considered one of my favorite films ever. I've watched that film so many times. It's really quite a remarkable work, and it's very, I think, talk about complicated works. That is an incredibly complicated, dark, and quite labyrinthine cinematic work. And so I don't think I would be able to fully I'm not that well equipped to be able to discuss that film with the kind of care and precision that the film deserves. And so I don't really think that my live stream on Vertigo will be in any way kind of, it's nothing special, but it is, I think, just a way for me to just begin to try to talk about this film and try to explain some reasons as to why I really connect with it as much as I do. And there are some, I mean, it is a pretty, I mean, I don't want to go into too much details now, but the Vertigo is a very, I mean, if you think about it, look at the plot, if it's written down on paper, it's a pretty out there sort of plot. And so it doesn't necessarily seem to be like the kind of plot of a film that one might think to be one of your favorite films of all time, that sort of thing. But there's something quite there's something quite mysterious about how this plot unfolds, and there's something also that is parallel to that, which I think is also equally as sort of captivating, which is this idea of the way that the sort of the cinematic tapestry of human psychology and how it seems to be running alongside this very complicated labyrinthine plot. And I think that sort of twisty, almost overly twisty plot is in itself, I think, a kind of statement on the way in which the cinematic tapestry of human psychology is being presented here. And I think there's a kind of statement that's being made that I think is even more broadly universal than the notion, which I think is often ascribed to this film. I think very aptly so, but it's often described as being, you know, Hitchcock's cinematic take on obsession. And I completely buy that, of course, but I think there's something more going on here as far as the way in which it seems to be both absorbing a kind of a kind of a narrative structure that then the film uses in turn to try to lay out some kind of foundational work as to a presentation on human psychology. And I think it's a broad strokes, and it's using a broad brush when it's painting its depiction of human psychology in a way that I think touches on universal themes that I think can be understood by all, beyond the idea of obsession. I think obsession is a very key part of it, but I think it's one of many key components of this film. So that will be the following Saturday. So that's going to be March 21st, 2020. So hopefully there will be no glitches this time. It looks like, am I correct? This live stream right now, what I'm doing, there seems to be no technical difficulties, right? Everything seems to be smooth sailing, I hope. So if that's the case, then yes, so this will be a very hopefully this will be an error-free, technical difficulty-free live stream both tomorrow and a week from tomorrow. So that's Afterlife tomorrow, and then Vertigo the following week. And I will make an announcement about Vertigo going forward before that. So anyway, so there's, and after Vertigo, I'm not sure yet, to be perfectly honest. I haven't really given it much detailed thought. I have given it some consideration as to what I might want to do, but nothing concrete yet. So just let's see what happens with these upcoming live streams, and then after that we can figure out what we can do for April, if you're still interested, of course. So, okay, so let's see here. Jonathan McCrory. Hello, Jonathan. How are you doing? So, you say, watched Afterlife last night. We'll tune in tomorrow. Great, Jonathan. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this film. So, thank you very much, Jonathan. Alteron, our dear friend Alteron Kaiju. Hello, my friend. How are you? I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm doing well. We in Tokyo are doing, I guess, as well as we can. I hope you are well. Wherever you are in the world, my dear friends. So, thank you very much. Jared says Friday the 13th. Yes, today is Friday the 13th. So, I don't have any kind of cinematic ritual for Friday the 13th. I know sometimes people might talk about Friday the 13th, right? The film Friday the 13th or anything like that. But I usually don't necessarily watch like a horror movie or anything necessarily on purpose for the sake of Friday the 13th. Maybe I would, it just happens to fall on Friday the 13th. But I have spoken again in passing about the Friday the 13th film series, and I really like those films very much. I'm especially the first four, and then if you count the fifth as part of that early cycle of films, and I must admit, I'm a very, very big fan of the fifth film. Friday the 13th: A New Beginning. I think that is one of the most over the top, just outlandishly sort of almost ludicrous in the levels of entertainment that it seems to be able to achieve on many, many levels. It's a very violent film, and I don't recommend it to everyone because it is a certain type of film, the slasher genre, and so it's not for everyone, that's for sure. But for anyone who's okay with it, I'm actually a big fan of that. In fact, I would say that while I really was watching Friday the 13th films a lot, I must admit that everything actually after 6 onwards, I'm okay with, but I'm not really into that. I'm really more into the core, sort of those early, that early cycle of films, including 5. But when you come to 5, everything seems to just the world that was created with sort of meticulous care, let's put it that way, from part 1, 2, 3, and then 4, is just almost, I don't know, on a kind of whim, just turned on its head, and it just becomes a complete different kind of beast, which is a kind of fascinating film experiment, if anything. I mean, one of the things that's great about those 80s slasher films and those slasher film series, a lot of them took a lot of chances, a lot of kind of narrative risks and real twists and turns. I think one of the most famous or infamous examples of this kind of risk-taking in sort of narrative cinema, in this kind of commercially, in this commercial cinema of the 80s, I think is Halloween 3. Halloween 3 is, I think, one of the most experimental films in a certain way, because of the way it essentially tackles the narrative issues that were kind of posed, that were presented in Halloween 2. You know, there are certain narrative issues. How do you solve those? Well, the filmmakers decided we'll make Halloween 3, and it's a very bold way of approaching the material. I would say the same is true, of course, for Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, and so I think that alone made it something that it was very fascinating to watch, and also it also has a kind of a ludicrous absurdity that makes it quite entertaining, and it also has sort of just sudden extreme levels. It just goes from extreme tone to extreme tone. It's just quite a almost a bizarre experience, and I find that kind of experience to be very exhilarating sometimes. And so there's that. But I'm not going to watch that now, although it is Friday the 13th. Probably would be very apt to watch Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, but probably not. Maybe one day. But let's see. Okay, so Cine Arts. Hello, Cine Arts is here. How are you doing, my friend? I hope you're well. Oh, Jared, Jared's talking about, yes, this really kind of this global issue that's confronting the world at the moment. So again, my dear friends, please take good care of yourselves during this time. It's I know this has this way of affecting many people in different ways, and it could be something that is very mentally very stressful, and so and quite taxing. You know, in terms of the nerves. You know, one can feel kind of nervous, etc. And I completely get that, because I have to admit that I do feel that way too whenever I go out on a train or something like that. So, but just take good care of yourselves, and make sure to wash your hands a lot, and do that. And you know, I've been, it might be, I don't know, going a bit too overboard on this, but you know, I've been recommended by some friends who work in the pharmaceutical field. I have some friends here in Japan who are in the pharmaceutical field, and also pharmacists, and they tell me that even before this whole crisis erupted in the world, they were always used to washing their hands with soap thoroughly, and they washed their hands for at least a minute and a half. I think that the general advice is 20 seconds, but actually a minute and a half with soap, with a little bit of damp with water, and then lather up with soap, and really thoroughly go through and wash all the way up to the part of the wrist here, in fact, and then wash thoroughly, and try to get some lather there under the fingernails as well. And so just wash up like this, and do that with every what's the phrase? You know, the fingers as well, and then for a minute and a half approximately, and then rinse thoroughly under running water, for like about maybe 20 or 30 seconds or so, more or less. And so I've been now in the habit, I've been in this habit for the last month or so to just do this kind of constantly whenever I go to the restroom or something like that, and then make sure you dry your hands off with a kind of a clean towel that you know that hasn't necessarily been used by someone else or something like that. You know, so all these precautions, so, or a clean handkerchief or something like that, and just make sure that you know, the water has completely run off to the extent possible. Maybe avoid those hand dryers, those hot air dryers or something like that. Yeah, but the length of time is always the thing. So what I do, and I've mentioned this before, but I always think of a theme song to a movie. And so I'll try to think of a theme song, and then I'll just try to hum it to myself, and then usually by the time I'm done humming, that'll be the end of the minute and a half or so. So I'll probably just I do that, and you know, lately what have I done? I mentioned before that I was humming the theme songs to like Seven Samurai and Rashomon and other Kurosawa films like that. Lately now I've been humming the theme, you know, some of the themes from Godzilla, Gojira, or I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm a big fan of like Rocky Horror Picture Show, the film version, and so I'll sometimes hum a song from Rocky Horror or something like that. Or I'm also a big fan of the musical. I don't know if you know this musical. It's called Bugsy Malone, but I'm a big fan of Bugsy Malone, and so sometimes I'll be humming a song from the film Bugsy Malone as I'm washing my hands, just to see if I can get the count right. And by the time I'm finished singing it, maybe out, you know, under my breath or in my head, it'll be 2 minutes or something. So yeah, so that's the state of things. So it's always good to just to be just at least, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying my best to make sure that whenever I'm in the restroom, I'll just be sure to wash my hands. So that's, I mean, for what it is, of course, that's the state of things as we find ourselves in the world right now, right? So hopefully, though, and I really mean this, right? Hopefully, this situation that we all find ourselves in will find a very swift and painless end. I mean, in any event, I hope this ends soon. Again, we have to remain hopeful, but we also have to be realistic. And so, anyway, I once again, my deepest, you know, I hope that all of you are well during this time. So, and yeah, that you are well, and the same holds true for your family and friends, you know, those around you. So. Let's see, Master25 says, Bruce Lee movie coming on Criterion. Yes, so I mean, I don't know, I haven't heard any news. Maybe has there been any updates beyond the New Year clue, which seemed to suggest, I think the most reasonable guess was that Bruce Lee films would be coming to the Criterion Collection. Now, if that's the case, and I think that's a cause for great celebration. Assuming that it is Bruce Lee films, we of course, the newsletter clue, or the New Year clue, as far as I recall, did not necessarily specify any specific Bruce Lee film. So, as you know, there are a number of films. I mean, he does have a number of films that he was in, of course, as a child actor. And there are some other films, there are maybe a couple appearances that he made before his, you know, his very famous Golden Harvest Raven Chow collaborations. Some of the films directed by Lo Wei, and then the stuff that he directed himself, right? So Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, and then that part of what ended up becoming released as being the Game of Death, and then of course there was his appearance in the Robert Klaus directed, at least according to the credits anyway. The film, of course, Enter the Dragon, and so there are many possibilities, of course, in terms of what Criterion could release. I know that there were those great Shout Select Blu-rays of Bruce Lee films, and here's one of them. In fact, here's the Shout Select Blu-ray of Game of Death, and so I think these are out of print now, if I'm not mistaken, and so that might suggest that maybe the licensing rights could be freed up in terms of North American Blu-ray physical media distribution rights and the like, and so maybe that leaves room for someone like Criterion to come in. And if that's the case, I think that would be really great. Now, of course, we know that there are many issues that exist with each specific film in terms of their presentation and the like, and so it'll be interesting to see just how Criterion will try to present these films. I mean, for example, the film The Big Boss. I mean, I think those of you who are Bruce Lee experts will know this already, but The Big Boss has a lot of interesting background information as far as how it was made, and there are some interesting sort of myths that have grown around the film in terms of certain sequences, certain edits that were made to the film, certain things that were obviously cut out, but we've never seen the actual footage of this, or it's been rarely seen, or it's been reported to have been in the film at the original initial release of the film, but it was then cut out for censorship reasons or something like that. And the like, and so there are a lot of issues with this, and also not to mention the fact, of course, that something, for instance, The Big Boss, if you just listen to the English track versus the Cantonese track versus the Mandarin track, I mean, there are some differences as well. I think the most obvious difference, of course, being the musical soundtrack, and so how the Criterion release might tackle this kind of issue, I think, is very very important. It could try to do it in the form of a commentary. I hope it does provide commentary tracks to these films, because I think the commentary tracks from Criterion are always very welcome indeed, or at least if not necessarily produced by Criterion, but maybe taken from other non-Criterion releases or past Blu-ray or DVD releases. And so I would do it really, I mean, the Mike Leader commentary tracks for the Bruce Lee films on Shout Select, I think, are pretty good. I mean, it's and in fact, there are actually two commentary tracks for the Big Boss release for Shout Select. So there's that's even better for the Big Boss, But the Mike Leader commentary tracks are really great. It would be great if I mean, the only issue I have with that, not with the Mike Leader content itself, which I think is really brilliant, but it's just the way it was recorded. It's very difficult to hear sometimes, and so you just have to turn up the volume a little bit, because I think the microphone was a little bit muffled or something like that. So it's a little bit difficult to catch exactly everything that he's saying, and you really want to catch it, because what he says, I think, is really good. He makes some great observations, and it's really lovely to hear. And he obviously loves the films very much, and so that's really great. So it will be interesting to see what Criterion will try to do with the Bruce Lee stuff. I think maybe a frame of reference with that, I mean, it could be maybe something like the Jackie Chan films that Criterion had released, what was it, last year now? So Police Story and Police Story 2. And so that might be a frame of reference that we might look towards as a possible clue as to how Criterion might seek to tackle its approach to releasing any Bruce Lee films. But of course, I don't think that's the only exclusive frame of reference that we could look towards in Criterion releases of the past, right? So we can, I mean, I think the Godzilla book, the Godzilla Showa era films, I think that's also another great reference in terms of releasing a kind of series of films. And if we think of the Bruce Lee, Golden Harvest, Raymond Chow collaborations as being kind of series of films, maybe they're not necessarily related in terms of narrative, but they are a kind of sequence of films within a certain time frame, and I'm including Game of Death in that as well. And I think then there's a possibility, of course, of seeing a kind of maybe box set or something like that that includes all of those films and a really great presentation and supplements and the like. So we'll have to see, of course. And I mean, and it's also very important too, because I mean these films are known by so many people. I mean, people know these films. People who are fans of Bruce Lee know them inside and out. And so I think if Criterion does it right, I mean, they could really hit it out of the park. And so I'm looking forward to that, you know, assuming that those rumors are true, and I believe that they are. And we shall see, of course. But yeah, it'll be great. I mean, also, I mean, don't count out Enter the Dragon as well. I mean, there's always a possibility of Enter the Dragon coming into the collection as well, I suppose. But I'm not sure about that in terms of what we've seen in terms of releases of Enter the Dragon in the past, and the like. So I don't know if we can realistically expect Enter the Dragon to come into the Criterion collection. Who knows? It might. If so, that would be a great thing. I mean, after all, these things are I mean, intellectual property and licensing, I mean, are the foundation for these deals. You know, Criterion, I mean, whoever owns the rights to these things, or whatever company owns the rights to these things, they have the right to either release them themselves, make a Blu-ray, release them themselves out in the public, or they can license them out. They can agree to give those rights to a third party, and that third party can then, in turn, create a DVD or Blu-ray and then put them out onto the market to sell, and then to get revenue, and then to give a portion of that revenue back to the licensor. I mean, it's called a royalty. So that's the situation that we assume all these Blu-rays are released upon, right? Licensing agreements, IP, intellectual property rights, and the like. And so my point is that all these things are, of course, creatures of contract, right? There's nothing set in stone necessarily that means that every single film it has to operate in the same way, or every single release has to operate in the same way. Of course, there are certain patterns and certain catalogs of films that are within the same umbrella of contract, etc. So that is a different issue. And so, putting that issue aside, my point is that you know, if we remember that IP and licensing is all creature of contract, then anything is possible if you get two parties to agree and they sign the contract. Anything is possible. That being said, whether that will actually happen, you know, we can always make best guesses. So probably there's less likelihood that Enter the Dragon will come into the Criterion collection. But who knows? Who knows? If it does, I will be the first one to jump up and down for joy, because I love that film so much, and I would love to see that in the Criterion. I would love to see that in the Criterion collection so much. But you know, that's that we'll see what happens. So, but I'm looking forward to it. JR62 is here. Our dear friend is here. JR62 says, have you heard about Paramount Presents line? Yes, I was asked this comment by by another viewer under my last video as well about the Paramount. And I'm sorry I haven't been responding to comments. I'll do so as soon as possible, maybe the beginning part of next week or so. But yes, I was also, excuse me, I was also asked this, and yes, I read about it a little bit. What was it? The Elvis film, right? King Creole, I think, and then Fatal Attraction, right? And then To Catch a Thief, is that right? As being the first batch of releases in April later this year. And then that will be followed up probably later in the year by films like, there were some other interesting ones that they were planning to release as well. So yeah, this looks very interesting. Now, I don't know. I mean, that's something else that, I mean, the last thing my wallet needs is another new Blu-ray lineup. And so I'm going to have to sort of wait and see on this one, just see what these things look like when they're actually released on the market. But I'm very much looking forward to it. I mean, To Catch a Thief, it's going to be a very great one to have. So, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this. I'll keep reading the news, and I'll just have a kind of wait and see approach and see what they look like. And I mean, if they end up being, I don't think they're going to be limited in number necessarily, but I could be wrong about that. But if there is an issue of maybe low stock or limited stock, I may have to consider. But I'm not necessarily going to. I don't know if I'm going to pre-order them or anything like that, but I am very interested. It'll be an interesting thing to see, and also it's I mean, it's good news in the sense that, I mean, heck, it's yet another sign that Blu-rays are still going to keep going on, at least for another however long it's going to be. So that's good news. Always, it's always good to hear stuff like that. Rob Tapscott is here. Hello, my friend. Zyrother, our dear friend, is here. Hello. Yes, Isaac Dunn says, what sad news it was this week with the passing of, yes, Max von Sydow, or sometimes it's pronounced Max von Sydow. But yes, Max von Sydow, yes, the great, actually his, if you watch the interview with Liv Ullmann on the Criterion release of the film Shame, you'll find that she pronounces his name Max von Sydow, or Sydow. And there's also some places that I found online where the way in which he pronounces it is actually Sydow and not Sydow. So that's always been something that I've always tried to confirm myself, because I know, for instance, on the Criterion commentaries and the like, it's Sydow, you know, and I think Peter Cowie and many other Criterion experts pronounce it Sydow. And I think also there was a documentary, the name escapes me now, but you know, there was all these filmmaker celebrities visiting Fora, the Bergman home, and I think it was Wes Anderson who was actually, he was saying, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was he was saying, you know, he hasn't necessarily seen a lot of Bergman films, but he knows. He knows that the name, it's actually Max von Sydow, and he's really trying to make a point that he knew how to pronounce the name Max von Sydow. But you know, I'm not sure. It's an interesting little bit of information. But I think more importantly is the man and the actor and what he had to represent. Of course, I mean, I didn't want to go and make a video about it. I don't necessarily. I think other people have done that in a way that's much better than I ever could. So, but there's no question, of course, that he was iconic. He was one of the great icons of. I don't want to just say art house cinema. He was one of the great icons of cinema. Period. His face is like. it's like on the Mount Rushmore of cinematic icons. And that is because he has a kind of ubiquitous presence that has its roots, of course, for many people, with his work with Ingmar Bergman, of course. And of course, his career is not just his work with Ingmar Bergman. His career is very vast and incredibly prolific, and quite it's quite extraordinary. Just the areas in which his career went, especially later in his career. It's quite a fascinating career. But what he does is he has a certain way of in his performances anyway. And let's take Bergman's work or his work with Bergman as an example. He has a certain way of transmitting information to the audience that is very crucial, but is also kind of like it's not like overly complicated. It's very much like there is a sense of a kind of fundamental feeling that he has. It's almost like a basic emotion of human nature, but he's able to transmit it with such dexterity and a kind of genuineness that is so obvious when you see his work on screen and on camera. And his close-ups are just remarkable. I mean, I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you want to see a great work, I mean, there's so many to go for, and I think people have mentioned I mean, so rightly, people have mentioned, I think, in most of the posts that I've seen online, films like Seventh Seal, perhaps. And I think that's quite appropriate, because that's perhaps his most iconic role in terms of that the art house cinema scene, of course, in Bergman, of course. But I would maybe if people have already recommended The Seventh Seal as a kind of iconic Max von Sydow performance, and I would also go with actually. The one I would probably go with is it's also a Bergman film. It's Hour of the Wolf, actually. Hour of the Wolf, or A Shame. There's a moment in Hour of the Wolf where there's a close-up on his face. It's an incredibly important moment in the film. It's so important. It's where essentially it's well, I don't want to say too much, but to say it's a very important moment, and the camera just goes into his face in this crucial scene, and you see the look on his face, and it's one of the most stunning moments of a performance of any actor I've ever seen. It just transmits so much, and it's so mysterious at the same time. So it's like it's everything. It's what's the phrase? Everything and nothing. It's one of those magical moments where it transmits everything and yet maintains a sense of mystery and ambiguity so cleverly, and also so with such earnestness and a genuine sense of humanity. You can really feel what it is he's going through. I mean, while still maintaining the sense of being an enigma, and that's quite a feat, I think, of a kind of performance craft, of course. And also, perhaps his most other iconic role, perhaps maybe was Father Merrin in The Exorcist, which is a really great role. I would also actually add to the extension of that performance that he gives in The Exorcist II, The Heretic. And I know that that's a film that is not necessarily a kind of film that people would tend to go to a lot, but it I think it's getting a little bit of a reappraisal in recent years, and I think rightly so, because I think Exorcist II, The Heretic is a far more interesting film than I think it's necessarily been been given credit for over the years in terms of the critical consensus. I mean, it's not a perfect film, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a perfect film, but I do think it is very interesting in the way in which, well, yeah, there are many interesting points about The Exorcist II, The Heretic. And in fact, one day, I would love to talk about, I mean, The Exorcist is a very fascinating work, but I'm actually very fascinated by The Exorcist II, The Heretic, and also perhaps equally as fascinated by The Exorcist III. I think those two films are just so just kind of almost in a really fantastic way, very baffling. And I love that about cinema. I love how it can kind of baffle and just sometimes be almost too on point with its sort of cinematic allegory and what it's trying to achieve. And I think, especially Exorcist II, I think really does that a lot in terms of the kind of imagery that it tries to employ and all this stuff. But I go back to Father Merrin in that film, and I think the Father Merrin that we see in that film, there's a lot of flashback to his younger days, of course, and I mean, we see the younger actor, not in old age makeup, but there is this real sense of struggle, and there was also a sense of struggle in the original film, The Exorcist, don't get me wrong, which I think was so well portrayed. But in the sense of struggle with Father Merrin in The Exorcist II, I would say, is also linked to a kind of a savior mode or savior role that is also rooted in this feeling of sort of humanitarian efforts and trying to save children and this sort of kind of approach to it, which I think it adds a human element to the Father Merrin character, which I think we didn't necessarily see that element of his character in the first film, The Exorcist, I would argue anyway. And so I think The Exorcist II is a really great extension of the Father Merrin performance. If we're talking about Father Merrin as a classic, iconic performance from the great Max von Sydow. Rest in peace, of course. Yes. Alan is here. Hello, our dear friend Alan. It's nice to see you. I hope you're doing well, my friend. Let's see here. Okay, so all right. I'm just going to see. Okay, here we go. Jared says, glad to know about Japanese Blu-rays working on American players. With how regions are, I often get confused when some countries are in one region, yet another country close by are not. Yes, so I think the one of the things that's confusing sometimes, it's always confusing for me, is Japan and the US are on the same Blu-ray region, but the DVD zones are different. So if you can, on the one hand, while you can play let's say if you have a US player, you can play a Japanese Blu-ray on a US player, but you can't play a Japanese DVD on a US player, and vice versa. So that's where the confusion always lies for me. But Blu-rays are okay as far as the cross-border accessibility of them, in terms of sharing the same zone, of course. And Jared says, adds also Vertigo is fantastic. I'm glad you think so, my friend. I'm very glad, because I agree. I think it's really great. I was eating lunch with a friend of mine some time back, and this person wasn't necessarily a fan of cinema. So I don't know why I said what it is. I'm about to explain what it was I said, but there's something that we were talking about, something over lunch in conversation, and he was saying, there's something about how he was cleaning his apartment or something. He had to go up and clean and go down and to the floor and clean and go back up and clean. And he just kept repeating up and down, up and down. And I just heard that, and I just suddenly recalled Scotty's little speech in Midge's apartment there at the very beginning. He was trying to climb the stepladder, and he's trying to prove that he can beat the acrophobia. And so he says, "Oh, this is a cinch." I look up, I look down. So what I did was during this conversation with lunch, with my friend over lunch, when he's talking about he was talking about cleaning his apartment. And he's going up and down. And I just suddenly said, almost randomly, "Oh yeah, I look up, I look down, I look up, I look down." I just suddenly said that as sort of quoting out loud that little thing from Vertigo, not realizing that I was actually speaking out loud. And there was a little bit of maybe a moment where perhaps my friend at lunch wasn't quite sure what I was talking about. And I don't blame him because it was really quite random, but it was merely because his talk about his cleaning his apartment reminded me of that speech of Scotty's in Vertigo. So that speech is also very important, by the way. I look up, I look down. There's a sort of idea of repetition in that, in what he's trying to do, and this idea of repetition before the actual moment of trauma occurring, and the idea also that when one the idea of habit and how difficult it is to break habit, even if it means confronting trauma. And that scene with the stepladder, it's a very comic scene potentially, but it's also a very illustrative scene about how deep his acrophobia really goes, but also how deep his psychological trauma goes. But also, it's an example of how that film is portraying this mode of human psychology, which is all about habits and repetition, in our lives, and how hard it is to break those. And it's expressed so perfectly by the very fact that he says, "I go up, I look up, I look down." I mean, that by itself is a kind of habit. He motions his head up and down like this, up and down, and just repeat it. And that is, I think, the perfect metaphor for the entire film, because I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if we remember, just talking in very vague terms, the film is about an action, or repeating an action, or repeating something, and seeing what this repetition is, and then where it leads, and it leads to a kind of trauma. And so I think the stepladder sequence is a perfect mini encapsulation of that very almost the thesis of the film, if you like, Vertigo. So anyway, yeah, I can't wait to talk about that one. So Erwin is here from Chile. So hello, Daisuke from Chile, as you say. Hello, Erwin, our dear friend. I hope you're well. And Sina Art says, "Wow, I look forward to your Vertigo discussion. It's a film I am obsessed with." Oh, that's great. Great. I'm looking forward to that. And Jared is gone now, but I hope to see you very soon, my friend. I hope you're well. Sean Duncan, just tuning in. What's the movie in the foreground? And it's Afterlife. Yes, which will be the topic of discussion tomorrow. So Saturday, March 14th, 11 p.m. Tokyo time. This particular live stream is just a test to make sure that the live stream actually works, and as far as I can tell, it's working okay. Right? Hopefully, it's working okay. There don't seem to be any technical glitches where I am. Now, if there are any technical glitches that you can identify from where you are, please let me know, and I'll see about that. But as far as I can tell, this seems to be going rather smoothly. So that's good. So JR62 says it buffered on my end for 3 seconds. Okay, but. Let's see. Erwin asks, "Will you ever show us your space to watch movies? I'm curious." I have no plans to at the moment. It's a very small, like unluxurious space, so it's at the moment, no. I might change my mind. I mean, I have no. How should I put it? It's really quite a very unimpressive setup. So so I don't think it's necessarily. I don't know if anyone would be interested anyway, but it's just a very very basic setup of a TV, and I can't have any special sound setups here because I can't create any loud noises lest they disturb my neighbors next door or something like that. And so we have to maintain a certain level of volume, and I usually sometimes I watch a film with headphones, but I'm not, to be perfectly honest, I'm not really that good with watching a film with headphones on, and so if I can avoid doing that, I usually do. But I sometimes have to do that at night. If the family is sleeping in the other room, of course, I don't want to wake them with the high volume, so I'll use headphones. But if I can avoid using headphones, I will. But that also means that my sound setup is not very good. I do have a VHS player hooked up. I have a Blu-ray player hooked up, Laserdisc player hooked up. So and the Blu-ray player can play. I can play pretty much any region, I think. So so that's all there. And now this isn't the only TV though. This room is not the main TV room. There's actually another room. There are many other rooms in this apartment but this is the room where I actually do my live streaming and YouTube videos. But this is kind of a spare room. And there's a main room with the TV that the family uses. And so if we watch a film with the family, then we'll watch over there. So there's that. But it's that's sort of getting into also my kind of family room. And I don't know if my wife or anyone would necessarily want me to have a video of that room, because it's sort of like kind of the private family part of the house, if you know what I mean. So it's probably not going to make a video on that, but I might change my mind sometime soon. But I appreciate your curiosity about that, and your asking the question. I'm very flattered by that. So thank you very much for expressing an interest. Let's see here. I'm just skipping some of the chat here, so my apologies if I've skipped over your comment. But Gloin the Hobbit, hello, it's nice to see you again. And you say, Daisuke, Afterlife was amazing. And you continue, I saw Afterlife in NYC IFC Center. They are here, Kazukore Ada Film Festival this week. My goodness, so that means you saw Afterlife in the movie theater very recently, is that correct? If so, that's really wonderful. I saw this film, Afterlife. It was released in theaters in the United States in, I want to say, like 1999, I think, around that time. And so I was in college at the time, and undergrad, and in the United States. And the college town that the town of the college that I was attending had a theater, a small movie theater, but it was a really great movie theater. I love that place. And it was a kind of smallish theater, kind of an art house theater. And they would show great films there. I mean, I remember I remember making some great discoveries of films when they were released there. And this is when I was, however old I was then, what is it, 1920s perhaps. So I would have, I remember watching Princess Mononoke in that theater, which is great. It was a great thing to see a Ghibli film in the theater. I think it was the first time I ever saw a Ghibli film in the theater. I think I have to. There's also the Mike Leigh film. I don't know if you know this film, Career Girls. I remember that film, and I still am. I was enthralled by that film. There was the film that he did before that film, which is Secrets and Lies, which I think is phenomenal, absolute knockout of a film. One of the films that I just grew up on. I saw Secrets and Lies so many times. And even now I watch it, and I'm stunned by how well constructed that film is. It's such a well constructed film. And then even before with a film like Naked, I'm a huge admirer of Mike Leigh's film Naked, and then Secrets and Lies, and then Career Girls. Well, Career Girls was released in this theater in this college town that I was in when I was in college, and it was such a mind-blowing experience. That is such a great film. That is such career goes. That is such a great film. Well, among the films that I saw in this college town theater was the film Afterlife. And when it was released in the theaters during this time, again, I was in America, I saw it, and Koreeda at the time wasn't necessarily well known. He wasn't the sort of the filmmaker, well known commodity that he is today. I mean, he is very, very well known, very, very famous. But back then, he wasn't as well known. I mean, this was his second narrative film after the film. What's the English title? Maboroshi. So. But to see this film in the theater was stunning. I was just, I was floored when I saw it for the first time in the theater. And then I was so floored that I went back as many times as I could to the theater to watch it. It was amazing every time. And every time I was so surprised at how well it held up, and also just how well its mysteries also held up. And even now, it's often described about a film like Citizen Kane. You know, you watch the film Citizen Kane every time, and sometimes every time you discover something new. Well, I think that's just as true for the film Afterlife as it is with any film. Every time I watch this film, I discover something new, every single time. And in fact, watching this film in preparation for these live streams and in preparation for the one that we're going to have tomorrow, I've rewatched the film again for the upteenth time, and I discovered new things. This is incredible. You know, I've seen this film so many times, and yet still I discover new things, and it's quite stunning to me. I'll try to keep. I'll try to make notes of that and share those with you tomorrow. I don't know. I don't think they're the most. They're not the greatest observations of the world or anything like that. But my point is that it's the act of discovery is always ongoing with this film, at least as far as I'm concerned. And so, if you were able to see this film in the theater, going to Hobbit, and I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy. And plus, there's a Koreeda festival. That's really great in New York. I don't know if it's still ongoing. I don't know what the situation now is with movie theaters and the current situation with all the stuff that's going on in the world. I mean, if I don't know if it's. I'm not sure whether it's prudent or not to go to the movie theaters now at this very moment. But in any event, if you were able to see it in the movie theater before, then I'm so happy to hear that. I'm just really, really impressed, and that makes me very happy, very, very happy. And so thank you very much for that. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the film. Hopefully we can talk about the film in more detail tomorrow. And if not going to Hobbit, then you can always leave a comment. You can always get back to me with any detailed comments or observations or feelings that you have about the film Afterlife, and I will definitely look that over and reply to you in good time. So thank you so much, my friend. And most importantly, I hope you are well. I really do. I hope you're well. It's always nice to see you. Dungeon Studio is here. Hello. Yes, Dungeon Studio says, can you benefit from the Powerhouse Indicator flash sale today? I just got the email. So I got the email like an hour ago. I was sitting in the room over there, and my phone buzzed, and then I checked my email, and there's a flash sale. So there's a Powerhouse Indicator flash sale. So I think, what was it? It's like free shipping for UK shipping, anything over £50, I think. And then for shipping overseas, I think it's like free tracking or something or something like that, or like for an order of £200. I don't know. So you check the Powerhouse Indicator website for details, but that's excuse me, that's another channel. I'd like for that to change, but that is a great label. That is a great label. Tons Radar. I mean, that is an eclectic collection of films, if ever there was one, my friend. That's such a great label. Powerhouse. Okay, so all right, I've got some buffering issues now. Nothing to go. So even if there's some buffering issues, it looks like we can still go through this. I don't understand what this is sometimes. I hope, yeah, but it looks like it should be okay. So I will. Let's see. All right. I am going to, but in fact, actually, I'm going to be heading off soon because it is getting a little bit late for me. So I do want to get going soon. But yeah. So I'm getting a lot of questions here. So I'm really sorry. I'm going to skip over some questions that people are asking here. I'm really sorry. So Carl's Rents and Reviews, and I think Isaac Bow from Indiana. Hello, I hope you're well. And both of you have been asking about the Carl Zeman set, The Three Fantastic Journeys by Carl Zeman, which is here from the Criterion Collection. And yes, I'm actually in the middle of going through this, and I've actually finished going through the majority of the stuff on this set. And there's a lot of stuff here. So I usually do the what do you call it? I usually do the Criterion releases for 2020 in these videos, and so this one is the next one that's on the schedule for that, and so it's been a little bit late. I've been a little bit late with that because, as you know, this has 3 films on it and has all these supplements. Most of them have been found on the second run, and so I'm debating it, but I'll probably do a kind of comparison between the Criterion release and the second run releases of the films Journey to the Beginning of Time and Invention for Destruction and Fabulous Baron Munchausen. And so that's the plan. But I can tell you that I'm very impressed with the set. I think I haven't quite decided in terms of whether it's worth. Is it worth getting the set, or is it worth getting the second run Blu-rays? Because the second run Blu-rays are also really quite fantastic. Although I do think there are arguments both sides, and arguments on both sides are, I think, equally as effective. So that's something that I'm still working out. Actually, I'm as soon as I'm able to formulate my thoughts, so I'll of course let you know, and I'll make the video accordingly. But that's where I am at the moment, and so I'm looking forward to that very much. And then once that's done, then I will go ahead with the other Criterion releases that I've just received in the mail. And so there's that. I would say, though, that if you haven't seen any Carl Zeman films, you really should check them out. And in fact, one of the great benefits of the Criterion release is the fact it includes the short films. Now, some of the short films have been made available before in other places, but there are some short films here that I think are it's great to have on a physical media disc like this, and just to see a kind of progression from his early work in the 40s, and then progressing with his short films that you can see on the Criterion release here, 4 of them, through the 40s and into the 50s, and then he goes into a journey to the beginning of time, which is again sort of a landmark in many ways. And then he continues with making his landmark films through Invention for Destruction and Fabulous Baron Munchausen, or Fabulous Baron Munchausen. And then so I think this is a great set in terms of, you can see the progression of his career through up to 1960, early 1960s, and that's really great. Plus the museum, the Carl Zeman museum documentaries, which are always very interesting to watch. There's sort of brief ones, and then there's the longer one. What was it, Film Adventure? The longer one, which is also a great overview of his career. There's also the new. The new Criterion produced interviews, one with John Stevenson where he's just one-on-one with the camera, and that interview is on the disc for Journey to the Beginning of Time. And then there's another interview, kind of a one where you have Phil Tippett and James O'Pearl, and they're talking together, and that interview, that is the kind of discussion, is on the disc for I want to say it's Invention for Destruction, and that's really great because the two of them are talking about their appreciation for Zeman. Also, they bring up a lot of details which I didn't quite realize until I heard their discussion, which is really really great, really eye-opening. And in particular, the discussion about Journey to the Beginning of Time. That discussion is on the disc for Invention for Destruction, but they do have time devoted to a discussion of the film Journey to the Beginning of Time, which is so eye-opening. And there's a particular detail that they reveal about that film that is, in my eyes, quite mind-blowing. I didn't quite realize this until I saw that interview with Criterion, and so I think this is such a great interview, or that discussion between these two cinema artists, I think is one of the reasons why this Criterion release is so great. Also, there are some clips from Phil Tippett's films, Mad God, was it Part 2 and then Part 3, and so those are really great. I haven't managed to see those, and so it's always nice to see clips like that. So I'm quite impressed with this. There are some little details that I do think are worth also being a little bit critical of. No release is perfect, of course, but overall, I'm very, very impressed with this. Now, once again, I do have to emphasize that these films are also available on separate releases, individual releases, and second run, and so that might be worth checking out. But I will try to be as detailed as possible when it comes to comparing those releases to the extent that I'm able to. So just this is coming as soon as I can, and after the Afterlife live stream tomorrow, hopefully I'll be able to upload. That's the thing. I have to do this. I have to upload the Criterion cover art poll results. I have to upload. I know there's Big Trouble in Little China that's still out there. I have to do the what is it? The Jacques Rivette Out One. I haven't forgotten about that. There's also Kazuo horror films I need to finish discussing. I haven't finished talking about those. And then speaking of Big Trouble in Little China, there's other the rest of the John Carpenter films that I really want to talk about. I have slowed down with that because I do also want to wait for the upcoming release by Scream or Shout Factory, under the Scream Factory name, of the film Escape from LA, right? Because Escape from LA is going to get a new Blu-ray release from Shout, and so that's always worth it. So that's, I think, going to be in April, the end of April, if I'm not mistaken. And so I've delayed my John Carpenter discussion, essentially to wait until the Escape from LA release comes in, because that is a film, Escape from LA. That's a film that is so that's a pretty difficult film to try to reconcile, I think, in the context of John Carpenter's career. It comes later in his career, of course, But I don't want to give too many things away right now. But at the moment, you know, I always try to be as positive about films as possible. But that film has a lot of things, I think, a lot of issues with that. And so I think there are some great things in that film, but I think there are also some pretty somewhat problematic issues with that as a work of cinematic entertainment. So hopefully, I'd like to think that maybe the Shout factory release that is planned for the end of April will maybe shed some new light on this film, some a new lease on life on this film, so to speak. And so I would, and maybe that might affect the way in which I might see John Carpenter's work as a whole, because I think that film falls in such a very interesting and almost precarious position in John Carpenter's career. And I don't want to go overboard. Again, I have this tendency to get ahead of myself, and I apologize for this, but I do want to mention that I think Escape from LA is in many ways a kind of it's in many ways a kind of, how should I put it? It's like it's almost like I don't want to say greatest hits, because that's not quite what I mean, but it's sort of a grand statement, if you will, on the 70s and 80s works of John Carpenter in many respects. That's the way I see it. And so as a kind of grand statement of that period of his career, I think I do want to see it in a more positive light than I usually do. Again, I don't hate the film. I really think it's really great, but I do want to try to give it as much room as possible. And hopefully the Shout release of that will maybe potentially give some new, some different light to that film. And that's what I'm hoping. And if that is the case, then that could potentially affect how I look at John Carpenter's filmography. And so I do want to wait a little bit for that. But my point is, I will put this up, the Karel Zeman discussion up as soon as I can. And then after that, I think Paris is Burning. So there's that. And after that, that's all I have as far as the recent Criterion releases. I don't have anything beyond that. So, but I will do that as soon as possible. But I do think that this set is really remarkable. Each film is just absolutely brilliant. You know, Zeman is not just, he is a great animator, of course, he's a great animator, but he is also he is a great filmmaker. I mean, I was planning to say this in the video, but I think these are the sorts of films that if you watch them when you're really, really young, right? If you're like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years old or something, 6 years old, and you watch these films, even now, chances are they will inspire you to want to become a filmmaker. I mean, they are that magical, and they are that potent and alive, and very tactile. And because of their tactile nature, I think they have this sense of approachability, which is just, but they're so ingenious at the same time. Case in point, Invention for Destruction. If you want to talk about a film that is so inventive, you watch the film Invention for Destruction, and it's not just a marvel technical feat. It is a great story. It is a great, there are some things that you look at and just so clever and so tongue-in-cheek and very visually arresting and the like. And if you're looking for something that is just so eye-catching, so tender and lovely, and you just take a look at those short films. If you liked Fabulous Baron Munchausen, you'll love the short film King Lavra. And if you are looking for something lovely and charming that is almost akin to, let's say, a romantic film made by the Archers or something, you watch Christmas Dream, which is the first short film that's on this. And then also there's the film Inspiration. I apologize for my poor pronunciation in the Czech language. Inspiraci. This is one of the most beautiful and charming animation works, and so it's so wonderful to have it here. And also, there's the Horseshoe for Luck, which is some. I will talk about this later, but that's also a really kind of funny, almost sort of Mr. Hulot type of everyman type of, or every person, I should say, every person type of film. But I will talk about that in the video. So, and I'll try to get my Czech pronunciation correct. So Journey to the Beginning of Time is Cesta do Pravěku, and Invention for Destruction is Vinyas Jaxi, and then Fabulous Baron Munchausen is Baron Pracil. So that's, I'll try to improve my Czech pronunciation between now and the video. But yes, so this is, yeah, make a long story short, it's recommended, but highly, highly recommended. I'll have detailed comments as soon as I can. Okay, so let's see. All right, so let me just, I really have to go. I'm really sorry, so I'm going to skip over some questions that have been asked, I think. So I'm very sorry, but I would just do very quick. If I've missed you, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get this pronounced incorrectly. I'm so sorry. Gyoda Schwartz. And hello, you're asking about the Torasan set. Yes, I haven't spoken about it, but I do have the suitcase. And it's the biggest thing in my collection. I haven't shown it on this YouTube channel, but it's really great. I mean, you can get the films individually as well. So, and the Blu-rays that they have are great. They have English subtitles as well. So, really, really great. The Torasan films, I would love the opportunity to talk about the Torasan films one day on this channel. But, yeah. All right. Unity, Duty, and Destiny is here. Hello, my friend. I hope you're well. Mike Eli is here. Hello. It's nice to see Wolfgratz is here, our dear friend. And Sean Wong, 13D from Hong Kong. Greetings from Hong Kong. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you very much, Sean. That's very kind of you. And the same to you, my dear friend. Please stay safe and take good care of yourself. Please be well. That's the most important thing. So please be well, and I hope you are, my friend. And let's see here. Let's see. Luden6. Hello, hello. So yes, I'm about to go, but that's okay. Let's see. You have films here. Cure, After the Storm, Only Angels, Having, Still Walking, Talk of the Night. Great, great. Cure. Oh gosh, I would love to talk about. And After the Storm. Oh gosh, don't get me started. Yes. Yes. Oh. Oh gosh. Stuart Morris has just joined. Found the link too late. That's okay. It's actually my fault because I do these things without any announcements. So this is again just a test to make sure that the live stream went without a hitch. And I think for the most part it seemed to go without any kind of technical glitch, unlike what we saw last Saturday with it was it was a technical glitch galore. So, but it seems to be going well. So, but that's okay, Stuart. I hope you're well, and thank you very much. Thank you very much, my friend. Okay, so let's end it there, or let me end it there. So, thank you once again, my dear friends, for joining today. And thank you very much, as always, for your kindness and your support and your understanding with many things, and most importantly, your enthusiasm. This is really great. I in the past, I had sometimes described your enthusiasm for film and cinema as being kind of, what did I use? I sometimes said it was infectious. And, I probably won't use that word now because probably the word infectious is I don't think it's the most appropriate word to use. in terms of describing enthusiasm. But you know, the point I want to make is that you know, I still feel very strongly that your enthusiasm is so, I don't want to use the word infectious, but let's use another word. Let's use a word like inspiring, or it's very reassuring, and it's quite it leaves me with a lot of it always reminds me in a very great way about how little I know, because you know so much more, and you always teach me, and you always give me recommendations, and so it's almost like you are teaching me all these things all the time, and I'm very grateful. You know, this YouTube channel is it's, I think, for me, it's all about getting that information from you. So that's one of the great joys of this, and so I really want to thank you for that. And you know, it's I know it's a little bit of a shame, not a little. It's quite a big shame, and also depending on where you are in the world, it can be quite an ordeal indeed, with certain events that are affecting us all, and so. At the moment. And so I just, once again, I want to reiterate with great sincerity, with the deepest sincerity that I'm able to muster, I really want to say, once again, that my deepest, heartfelt, best wishes to all of you. Please take good care of yourselves. This is the most important thing. Right? This is the most important thing. Take good care of yourselves, and to take good care of those around you. Now, whatever that means specifically in your lives, you know what that means, of course, my friends. But you know, whatever that means to you, I hope that you are well, and that those around you are well. And you know, I oft repeat myself, but I think important things are worth repeating, right? Because it is so important during these times. It's always been important, but especially now it feels that it seems to be in particular of a high level of importance. And so I do hope that you are well, and you're taking good care of yourselves, and that things are treating you well, or as well as can be. And if not, then I hope things get better as soon as possible. And I really, really mean that. So whatever the case may be, I hope things get better as soon as possible. And until they do, or in the meantime, or at any time you feel up to it, if you want to talk about movies or recommendations for good films to watch, or anything like that, my friends, and you don't mind talking to a guy like me, who doesn't know much. If you don't mind talking to me, then I certainly wouldn't mind hearing from you. In fact, I would love the chance to hear from you, and to hear how you are, and to hear what kinds of films you have been watching lately, and what kinds of films you're interested in watching, or planning to watch down the line. I am always happy to hear from you, and you know, I owe you so much, my friends. So I just hope that you are well. Please take good care of yourselves, and I will see you again very soon. And you know, it's sometimes the world is sometimes a very difficult place, and so for many reasons, and so but you know, your health and your well-being, that's the most important thing. So once you've taken care of that, my friends, of course, just of course, what do I always say, right? Just keep on watching a lot of great movies. So just take good care of yourselves, and I will see you very soon, my friends. Thank you once again for your time, and have a great rest of your day. So thank you, and cheers. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm just ending the chat. Excuse me. I'm just ending the chat just as Stuart Morris says, only watched In the Realm of the Senses for the first time yesterday. Wow. So, I would love to hear your thoughts about that film, my friend, one day. I haven't spoken about that film yet. Have been meaning to. It is, in my estimation, it's a very difficult film. Don't get me wrong; it's incredibly difficult. I think for many reasons that I think are quite obvious in terms of in terms of how it depicts certain aspects of human sexuality. But it's, I think, maybe amongst that, or maybe I don't want to say despite that, because I think that that aspect of the expression of human sexuality is a key component, excuse me, of that film. But I think in relation to that, I think that film is it's quite a how should I put it? It's it's one that affects me quite quite profoundly. Um, don't get me wrong, it's very, very difficult in my estimation. I don't claim to know it very well, but it has affected me quite profoundly, very much so. And I think I would love the opportunity one day to be able to talk about that film and more films by Oshima. But I hope that it was a, I hope that, for what the film is, of course, I hope that it was how should I put it? I hope that you found the film to be a rewarding experience, and if not, that's okay too. I mean, I acknowledge that it's a film that's not necessarily for everyone. So, but yeah. So thank you very much for sharing that, and I will see you very soon. All right, my friends. So, cheers and take care. All right, let's see. Um, okay. Let's see. I'm still on here. All right, and push the button. All right, my friends, take care. Once again, take good care of yourselves. All right, be well, my friends.